Can I have a motion?
Moved.
So moved.
Mr. Sweeney, second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Pellet. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the board is in open session. Item F is the presentation of the 2022 public budget hearing by Ms. Teresa Linsky.
I think you need a microphone, right? Mr. Shea, is that one okay, the one at the podium? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I am here to present the final budget hearing tonight. What we had advertised was an increase of 3.03. That's what was presented preliminarily. Overall, it would have been an increase of 2.85% if you take out the debt service tax levy decrease, and that included bank cap of 441,741. After discussions we had following the preliminary meeting, it was suggested to take a look at the health benefits.
I can't hear you really that well. Can you speak
No?
closer to the mic?
Okay. It was suggested to look into the health benefits. So I have an analysis, and if it has different scenarios, that if healthcare were to go up 20% for the year, so 10% for the half year, we actually, the net change to the budget would be a decrease of 250,000. That would result in a tax, just general fund increase of 2.45%. If we were to assume the health benefits go up 7.5%, again, 15 for the year, it's half a year, that would result in a decrease to the health benefits. And I'm sorry, I need to back up. We also have made personnel changes. After we struck the first budget, we've added 4 employees to the budget, and the net change is at 250 for 22 at 2.45%. The next is assuming again the 7.5% for half a year with the additional 4 employees. The net change from what we presented earlier would be a decrease of 485,884 for a total general fund budget increase of 1.9%. If we assumed it was going to be 10% for the year or 5% for half year, with 4 additional employees in, the net change to the budget is 722,000. Why? Okay. Because in January, we're in state we're in state health benefits now, so in January, that's when we get the rate increase. We don't know what that will be at this time. So if it was, a 15% increase, we would have half a year, half of that for half of the year. And up on the screen, this has been historically where the state health benefit has been. They were back in 2010, they were at 25%. You could see that they're all over the place. Last year, they were at -3%, almost -4%, I'm sorry. And I just need you to understand the state health benefits is not held to the same standards in the insurance industry, where other private plans need to keep a certain reserve. They don't. There a lot of times they're not funded the same way private Blue Cross Blue Shield is. So they can do, whatever they want with the rates, but they need to catch up at some point. So I have no idea what next year will be. But after a -4, I would assume they're going to go high. Based on what I presented so far, if we went to 2.45%, the percent change would be 2.27 because of the decrease in debt service. At 2.45, we would be using 192,000 of bank cap. The average tax payment on a household assessed at 206,351 would be $111. At 1.9, the overall percent change would be 1.73, and the average tax payment on an average house assessment would be 101. And the last one is at 1.35%, the percent change would be 1.18 overall, including the decrease in the debt service, and it'd be $91 per average household. These are slides that I think you've been looking at these probably since 2019, 2020, and you saw last time the decrease in state aid of $10 million on a $65 million budget. State aid trend is down. This is a projection for a 3-year projection, revenue projection that I believe the auditor, I wasn't here, had presented to the board. He had suggested the 3.03, 2022, 23, 2%, and 23, 24, 2% to make up for the loss in state aid. This is the tax levy trend of there's 5 million. There were years where you did not go to your 2%. So the difference in that is about $5 million. Now, this is future year budget projections, and again, they're just projections. I'm not saying that we're going to go to 2% in the following years. This is just a projection. But if you go to the percent on general fund increase, and this is only general fund, this doesn't include the capital portion of the general fund. This year, the increase would be 2.26%. After that, there is no more bank cap. It's gone. The the highest you can go to in the following years is 2%. So overall, the increase on the general fund in 2022-23 is 0.7%. In 23-24 is 0.5%. And in 24-25, 0.7%. Now, within that percentage, you have your negotiated contract, and you have salaries in there that need to be funded. You have inflation, you have increase in your operating expenses. So that's your option. Right at the bottom, that's what we're looking at going forward. Next steps. After the public hearing, I will post the user-friendly budget, and the taxes certification of amount fixed and determined by the school board to the County Board of Taxation would happen by May 19th. Questions?
All right, thank you, Ms. Linsky, for presenting that to the board. So as the board saw, that we did have an advertised levy increase in the advertised budget of 3.03%. So the board will have to come to some sort of consensus this evening about whether to move forward in that direction or whether to modify the budget in any way, inclusive of the changes, the potential changes that were proposed by Ms. Linsky this evening to the health benefits line. That's a line item that's received the most discussion over the last week or two. So I'd like to open up the floor to board members to speak to that at this point, so that we can come to a consensus on what we would like to do.
So, okay, I'll go. On the healthcare issue, all right. As I understand these revised 1, 2, and 3 here, all right. Revised 1 is a 10% increase, revised 2 is a 7.5% increase, and revised 3 is a 5% increase, correct? Okay. So, in reality, on a yearly basis, that's 20, 15, and 10, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if you take the historical data that you gave us, which by the way, thank you, and statistically you throw out the high and the low, and then you take the average, it's about 9.15%. Okay, that's per year. So to say that we need 20%, I think is really way off the mark. To say that we need 15% is kind of high off the mark. I'd be geared more towards 5% because that gives us a 10% increase in the year. Even if you wanted to inch that up to 6% just to make sure. If you inched it up to 6%, you come darn close to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years worth of totals. In other words, that exceeds 8 years, 8 of the last years of increases. So, I mean, just wanted to share that, and those are my comments.
So
Thank you.
while I agree with your line of reasoning, as someone who has lived this health benefit for lost count of how many years, it is so volatile. There is no
Adina, could you just
rhyme.
pull the microphone closer to you?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
That's okay. Sorry about that. So there's no rhyme or reason. So we can sit here and logically say, let's take an average, and they can blow us out of the water. I've lived it. I've asked HR, what do you think? Nobody knows anything. It's shooting in the dark. And I would rather see us plan for the highest increase and be wrong than plan for the lowest increase and be wrong.
I think that's a valid point. I mean, if we were planning 10 years and we were saying, oh, it's going to bounce around, but we're going to do this every year and it'll all even out, and we have some, kind of leeway, there's money to kind of float if we are wrong for a year, but we have to guess here, and we're not in, we have to be careful because year 2 and year 3, if we guess wrong, we don't have a lot of, we're in a bad financial situation if we guess wrong. So I think that's a risky move to just, especially given what they did last year. I mean, you don't know, you really don't know, but after going down for the first time, I think ever, and then having COVID, I think it's a very risky move to just assume it's going to be right in the middle.
I don't find there to be a risk when we have an $11 million COVID savings. I don't find that to be a risk at all. I think it is a good compromise to do the 1.18. I think that I'd like to see 0, but I am willing to compromise at the 1.18.
If you look at the math and you look at the data that we're given, okay, if you came in at 6%, okay, take the outliers out because they don't count. They're way too high and way too low. It keeps us above 7 of the 9 years' percentage increases. I think that mitigates a lot of risk. I mean, if you're going to go with a 20%, yeah, that mitigates probably all the risk. But it's never been 20% except for 1 year in 2010. And who knows what the reasoning behind
25.
What's that?
It was 25.
Right, but who knows what the reason that was? That's an outlier. You can't even count that.
But I think, Martin, that's the point, right?
Yes.
Like, I think we're approaching this with minds of the average or corporate America, where the state can do what they want. They
Well-
really can. They can raise it 50%, 30%.
Well, then why not budget 50%? Because we're trying to do something that's financially prudent here and with the best amount of information that we have.
Right, and I totally understand that logic, absolutely.
But I think at
Understand the logic, but
20%,
come to a different conclusion.
At 20%, we're not even listening to the data we have in front of us. And I don't think we're following any logical path. We're just saying we want to, we absolutely want to plan for the worst. And I understand that logic, but it costs a lot of money to do that.
Yeah, I do support Martin's thought process on that.
What happens if we're wrong? What would the scenario look like if we plan for this 5% and we're getting for the half year a 10% increase? So where do we go then? I'm not sure where we go if that happens. I mean, somebody who's been here longer can maybe answer that for me, or?
I think that goes back to the administration, right? I mean, the recommendation was higher than the highest number here. So there's obviously a
I mean, if
risk
it
that-
comes in higher than what's budgeted, you would hope that you would have enough breakage and fund balance elsewhere in the budget to absorb that.
But we already need to have a significant reduction in the years to come, and we're running out of runway on some of the ways that we've been cutting. Like, we can't necessarily count on retire and not replace now that we've kind of done so much retiring and not replacing.
Right, I mean, we really are at the end of that program.
And I think the other thing to consider is one of the things that has been on hold is our facilities.
Yeah.
It's not, we don't have a huge facilities budget that we can draw from if we're not breaking even on this. We have buildings that need things.
Mr. Zimmerman,
To me, you said that.
can you just pull your mic closer to you?
25% was an outlier. Well, if there was ever a year to be set up for an outlier, this would be it. I mean, last year, everybody was cutting everything because of COVID. They're going to try to make that money back. And state funds, whether it's taxes or not, they're going to try to adjust it. So I could see them coming back with a 10% or /20%, because healthcare is not getting cheaper. They didn't have a great year, even though everybody was in and out of the hospital. So, they're funding stuff. To me, if our financial situation was better overall, maybe, but to me, we have one time with the cap, it disappears, we never can capture it. If this comes out at 20%, we're going to be cutting stuff, which is the board has kind of indicated we're not looking to cut programs or teachers. And, eventually you get to them. We can cut and manipulate things, but eventually, if we have expenses we don't anticipate, we're going to have to dig into that part of the situation. Because the next 3 years, are not great. They're not rosy. It's not like we're looking, and here's the other thing. What if, some people say the district's going down. I personally believe it's going up. What if we have to add 10 more teachers? or go to 30 kids in a classroom because we can't afford it because we misjudged the healthcare. I mean, they're all intertwined in the end. There's only so much money around. The law dictates how we use the money. So I think we should keep it at the 3.03 and keep it the way it is because we don't know. Anybody who can predict the future based on the past after this year, it's irrelevant. I mean, whoever thought we lived through this, you know? Businesses all over are adjusting, scrambling. You know, the people put out of business and people made millionaires over COVID. You know, it's a strange time. So if there was ever a year for an outlier, I think this would be the one coming up. And the fact that we can't do nothing until January seems almost crazy also.
But nobody's talking about the taxpayer here. Nobody's saying what the climate of the taxpayer is. You know, we're concerning ourselves with, you know, adding more money into what we need, but we're not talking about what the taxpayer needs. The taxpayers had a very difficult year. We see that. Our government is giving us stimulus money. We've never received that before in our lives. Think about what it's done to our families. Think about the people that have to make the decision between food and oil. And, you know, in my line of business, I see that every day. And I see how much struggle there is and in this community just to pay the bills. There's a moratorium right now on foreclosures, but there's not going to be soon. And then those people, what happens when they can't pay their mortgage? And then all of a sudden, you know, they're not paying their taxes. And what's happening to the rest of the community because of that? I understand that you're fearful of things that happen with the school, but we do have this excess money from COVID, you know, and maybe it's not exactly $11 million. Let's say it's 6. It's still, nobody's talking about the climate of what the taxpayer's feeling right now. And I see that every day.
So Kelly, I do think we heard you when you said that, and I think the administration did hear you as well. We started at 3.03, and they now have presented us with a 2.45, and hopefully that helps a little bit. But I think when we talk about programs, there are schools in this county that are looking to cut their graphics program or to cut that program. I don't want to be that school. I moved here for the schools. I don't want that to change. I don't want my young one to come up to kindergarten and there'll be 26 kindergartners in a class. I understand it's been very hard for people and it's frustrating, but I trust the administration, and the administration went back at the direction from the table, and we're looking at a 2.45. That's the one I'm looking at.
So I think another way that, you know, I hear you about taxpayers suffering, but our families and our students have suffered mightily this year. I mean, in terms of, you know, lost class time, lost activities, the savings that we've realized have come directly from suffering of our students and the families that send students to this district. And so I think we need to be mindful of, you know, next year, we may need to do some more for them too. We haven't talked about that in this budget, but there, you know, there's a possibility we'll be needing to run virtual classes again. I mean, I can't even imagine that, but in addition, we may need to catch these kids up in some way. There may be other things we need to consider with the money that came from them. I think belongs, you know, to help make up for the horrible, you know, year that we've all been through. And if there's one good thing came out of it, that, you know, we got a little money in the district's pocket when we desperately need it. I think it's important to put it where, you know, where it's most needed, which is, I think, the students.
So then, Jen, to question you, saying your thought process that we might need more money to catch students up, then from the ESSER allocation, the district got $649 and $747 just recently. It will be coming in June. Also for learning acceleration, $41,698, plus mental health supports and services, $45,000. So then are you saying we'll need more beyond the ESSER funds that the grant will be supplying?
I honestly don't know what we'll need. I really don't. I'm just, you know, I'm just saying that this district is, you know, financially, we were in a really dark place. And now we have an opportunity to kind of shore up our reserves to provide for a softer landing with the financial hit of $10 million that we faced. And I don't think we should be, super quick to not take that into consideration, that we could be setting up, our kids for these larger class sizes, programs lost, really hitting, we're cutting, we've removed all of the, I don't even want to call them easy because they weren't easy cuts to begin with. But we did the state healthcare plan, we did the we're getting down to the point where there's not a lot left to work with here. So I just think that we can't afford to be wrong on this healthcare issue, and we could be, and we could be fine, but I just don't know that it's worth the risk. I worry about what that will do to our district. And by the way, a declining district doesn't help the taxpayers. It's not going to help you with your tax value. It's not going to help you, with your community. It's not going to help with morale with the teachers. It's just going to spiral. So that concerns me. Yeah.
So I have a question, and Karen, you or Chuck might be able to answer this for me. I came into the negotiating committee a little bit on the late side because I started in January, of course. But one of the things I did remember there is that we changed some healthcare plan. And in that change, we saved some money. Okay. What did we save? Okay. And why is this number such a high number if we indeed changed and saved money? Where's that number? Where does that play into this? We're going off of a budgeted number from last year, and we're predicating our increase on that. So how much money did we save? And I think you guys might have that number, I don't know, but how much money did we save by going to that other healthcare plan? And why are we not taking that into consideration?
Is the number we're working off for 2020, 2021, the budgeted amount or the expense, what we're going to end
It's
with?
budgeted off the 2021 amount.
So it's not really a real number. It's what was budgeted last year before the health insurance changed. So what is that real number? And what is the increase off of that number? So, I mean, does anybody have that answer?
I don't.
That's a very good point, Martin.
Yes, it is.
So again, we're making a decision on non-real data. So, I mean, unfortunately, we have to hash this thing out tonight, I'm pretty sure. But the reality of it is if we did save money, then this budgeted number should be lower. Therefore, if we do go with a bigger increase, the end number still won't be as high as it is right now. So I don't know what everybody wants to do with that, but we don't have the right number.
Is that true? The rest of the numbers in that contract as well, like the salaries? And I mean, are we working off of real numbers for the rest
And
of
that
them?
number has a 2-year freeze on it too.
Your personnel.
No, there's,
That's right.
what's a 2-year freeze? I'm sorry.
It's a 2-year contract with that number.
No, but they increase it. Like the healthcare, you're saying it stays the same for 2 years? I'm sorry,
That
I'm
was
just trying to
dental.
understand.
That was my understanding.
No, that's what we're talking about. It increases in January. You have to stay in the plan for 2 years. That's probably what you're thinking.
Right, but that's not the real number that we have.
You have to stay in state health benefits for up to 2 years, but the rates will change during those 2 years.
But we don't have that rate.
Right? We don't have the state
for January.
That's what Martin's saying.
That's what
Right,
Martin
we
said.
don't,
What was
we
it?
don't
Not out yet.
have, we don't have the new number of what healthcare
Right.
costs us today. We have the number that we budgeted for last year that was based on what it cost us the year before.
Before
So
the
we
health
supposedly, right, so
state.
we supposedly saved money. Where's that number? Because that's the number we should be focusing on, not the budgeted number, because we don't know where that lies. So if we truly did save money, the real number lies below that number. So how do we get that number in the next half hour?
I don't know.
Well, we should have that number. Right?
It might be in the blue book that we got. We might have the expenditures too.
Joe, we can't hear
Okay.
you.
I said it might be in the blue book that we have. I don't have it with me. That
Here, I have
it-
mine.
Oh.
it might have the expenditures to date, whatever date
You can
it
give that
was.
to Martin. Martin, do you have yours?
I don't.
Yeah, borrow mine.
I don't know if it is or not. If anywhere, that it could be there. I kind of agree with Martin about insurance. The last year that the rate went down was because of COVID, and there was a significant amount of claims that were not filed. People didn't get sick, they didn't go anywhere. I feel that that may also occur this year, and that the state health plan would be hard pressed to justify a significant rate increase. But we don't know. So that's just an insurance guess. There's millions of actuaries who are employed to do that kind of thing. But if we do not budget the 10% or whatever the 3.03% that's on the original budget presentation, that means we're not going for the full amount that we are allowed to go for every year. Is that correct? So then.
You can go up to 2% plus.
So we
bank
won't
to
be
cap.
going we're going to take, so are we not going to go the 2% or are we not going to use all of the bank cap?
So it depends on the scenario, right? So if you went to scenario B or scenario C, you would be coming in under the 2% allowed.
Right.
So you would generate bank to cap in those scenarios.
So if we don't go for the full amount of the full 2% and we don't use the bank cap, then we're limiting what we are doing next year and then the following year, because we know already that we're not going to get the state funding that we're supposed to get. So we can't plan for 1 year at a time. We have to plan for multiple years. In the past, boards of education did not have that information about how little or how less funds they were going to be receiving from the states. And they planned year in, one year at a time. We can't do that because we know already how bad it's going to be.
But we have the cost savings.
I didn't hear you.
We have the cost savings. I just.
We've saved money because of COVID, no question about it. And that puts us in a wonderful position for next year. And
So
if we
then
did
why-
not have COVID, we wouldn't be in this luxury.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Do we really, should we really take advantage of that 3-year? What? Oh. Should we be in this climate, financial climate, to the taxpayers? Should we really be looking at that 3-year thought process where I agreed with it before COVID? I just don't think we have the luxury to do this to the taxpayers. I feel that right now, we should really just kind of stay in a holding pattern. We have all the savings. We don't really need to go to that 3%. Why would we do that to these taxpayers at this time when they've been hit so hard? And just keep in mind that $206,000 house, the average, most people are not going to be in that average. That average factors in condos and hotel units and all types of different things that we have in this town. So it's not really it's like kind of an unrealistic snapshot, that 206,000. 206, yeah, thousand, the average house. So I just think that, yes, that mindset of that 3-year plan is a great plan, but not in this year, not with what happened to everybody in this year financially.
But I feel like whatever we do here tonight at this table really affects moving forward, because it limits us as to how much we can raise going on in further years. And we know that there are things that need to get done. Most of us, I would say, sitting at this table, do not want higher classroom size, do not want our buildings to fall apart. We have schools in this state that still can't open because of COVID and their buildings are falling apart. I never want to put our children in that situation, ever. And I'm going to say it again. The administration started at 3.03. They came down to 2.45. And I think we need to respect that. And we need to trust them that they know what they're doing.
I'd like to give other board members also the opportunity to weigh in that haven't had a chance to do so yet, if they'd like to.
Martin, did you find that number?
It's not in there. The column is not available on there for actual. It's all either proposed or previous year or what have you, so it's not there.
Did we start the state plan, though? We started it?
Mid-year.
Yeah,
Mhm.
March
Mid-year?
1st.
Mid-year.
So then we would have those numbers because we started, right?
I mean, they're available, we don't have them here.
Yeah, I
Well,
I
can't we get-
believe,
can we
I
get on a
believe the
computer?
first set of numbers that we got had actuals on them,
Okay.
but these don't. So, and I don't have those, the older folder. It was like, I was probably 4 or 5, maybe even 5 meetings ago. And I think that was on those documents.
Well, can we quick run and get those? Wouldn't they be on the computer?
I don't know how easily accessible they are, but Ms. Coughlin, you were
No,
about to.
I have a question at the moment about the meeting that's happening right now. Nowhere on our agenda does it say a public budget hearing. Are we currently in the hearing, but yet the vote isn't until page 13? Is
No.
that when we go into the
Item-
public budget hearing?
We're
And
on
this is the
item F, which
presentation?
is, item F is the public budget hearing on the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah, the board approved the attached resolution regarding
No,
the
item-
school budget.
Page
Page
2.
2. Because of those double-sided pages, Teresa.
Right, page 2,
Item F.
revised.
Yeah, doesn't say.
We're here. Right. I'm just,
You're right.
I'm just- that's what I'm saying.
Isn't for a while.
no, I'm just saying I'm confused. Are we in the public budget hearing at the moment to give the
Correct.
public a chance to talk and us talk?
The
Or
public,
is this just the presentation?
it's the public budget hearing is a presentation of the budget to the board and the public. And then the board is weighing in now, and the public has the opportunity to weigh in during item K.
Okay, but not okay. Specifically for the budget, is there a public budget hearing that we can open up specifically to discuss the budget for the public? That's so then that'll go under K. Under
Yeah,
public
and the
budget
vote is
hearing.
not until later in the meeting, until
Right.
after the public will have the opportunity to comment.
Well, they're going to be able to comment in K.
K, and then we don't vote until later in the meeting.
Why is that?
I'm just
Because we vote
confused. There's no
underneath, under
public
the business administrator's report.
I
budget
think,
hearing.
excuse me, we did speak with the county office for clarification on that today.
Okay,
Public hearings are utilized for many different functions of boards of education.
right.
One of them happens to be for a public budget hearing. Other things like a superintendent's contract is also a public hearing.
Right.
What it means is that somewhere on the agenda, there has to be the opportunity for the public to comment on the presentation, and that's noted in item K. On our current agenda, there's nothing under the law that says it needs to occur at the exact same time as the public presentation by the business administrator.
No, and I agree. I was just looking for clarification because that's how it's always been done. So I was just sitting here trying to get a sense, listening to everybody, and I appreciate everybody's input. And I understand there's no law per se, but being how this board has always done it based on past precedent, I was just getting confused. Do we talk now? Do we talk later? Okay, so then the public can talk during K, but there's no specific time. for-
And we'll vote under item M. If I said that correct. Yes.
So without these numbers that Martin is speaking to, how are we supposed to vote without seeing those?
Well, the board would vote based upon what they're comfortable budgeting for next year.
But Martin, did you say we don't have the real numbers, right? Correct? Is it?
We don't have the actuals. And
Thank you.
If
That's
we
what I
save
figured.
money through the half year, then we don't have the real numbers, and we're working off a budget number that was put in place utilizing data
old
from the
plan.
previous year from that.
Yeah.
So 1920.
But we would only have the numbers for about, what, 2 months? Not even? We're not at the end of April?
Sure.
But
The
you
current
can,
rates.
if you have those numbers,
Saying.
then you can take and project what this is going to be, because it's exactly what it's going to be for the next half a year. And then realize that savings and understand that savings, which I don't think we're doing.
Do we have approximate figures?
I don't recall. I mean, I was a part of negotiations. I don't know what the cost savings was for the financials as far as the health benefits went. I mean, there are other costs that we're talking about here. And I think, part of the challenge, although you're asking a very specific question, I do not have those figures. I don't know what the cost savings was. We also have additional costs that we're facing. I'm a bit concerned because I'm very worried about our students and our faculty. As the superintendent of schools, my responsibility first and foremost is to the 2,900 students who can't come here and speak and vote. So it's my responsibility to provide the best possible education that the faculty can. They've worked tirelessly this year. While I understand there is some discussion around the table about excess funds at this time, we are in an unprecedented time. The next couple of years are unpredictable. The only thing we know is that we're losing state aid. We don't know what the cost of healthcare is going to be. We don't know what the needs will be in our classrooms. We don't know what a virtual platform or a non-virtual platform looks like. We don't know what the requirements are going to be coming from the state. And all those things are unknowns. For the first time at last week's meeting, April 22nd, we looked at a projection of several years. If I recall, a year ago, we started talking about a financial roadmap. And we worked to talk about the financial roadmap, and we had an interim BA who did what she could to put things together. But it wasn't until last week that we could actually start to look at planning for the next 3 years. And that really was based on surplus and fund balance. And as difficult as that is, it's really important for us to look at a long-term, a several-year planning because of the financial challenges we're facing as a district. I think to look at a volatile situation as this one, as a one-year snapshot, is a mistake. And I'm very concerned about what that does for our children. I'm equally concerned about class size, something that we've talked about publicly maybe 2 meetings ago. I'm already worried for our faculty having to teach 27 children in an elementary classroom. Those class sizes are already unhealthy, in my opinion. They are not the best product we can put forth for our community and for our taxpayers, for our parents who rely very heavily on the education that Vernon once provided. So although I don't have the specific details, you're talking about, Martin, you said 5 meetings ago, we've been talking about this a lot. There's somewhere in one of the papers, and if we didn't go through it at the time, I don't know why. Oh. I guess I said SIRI, and my watch decided to pick up something. So, again, we've gone through the iterations of the budget. I don't know how many meetings, right? At this point, I keep looking at papers and not knowing which one we're at. Tonight is a very difficult time. We have to come to some kind of consensus on what we collectively feel is fair to both. I hear you, the need of the taxpayer, as well as the needs of our students. But I think I'd be foolish if I said that I knew what September was going to bring for anyone. We have no idea. We have no guidance from the governor, from the Department of Ed at this point in time, and it's the end of April. I mean, next week is May. It would be nice if we had that information, and we don't. But the money we saved during COVID is a luxury, I think the word that Mr. Sweeney used. But we will not, I'm hoping, right? We're not going to have that luxury. Eventually, we are fully operational right now, right? With the exception of things like field trips and those kind of things where we would still see some cost savings. But in the fall, the direction so far to the administration is run our schools exactly the way we've always run them, with appropriate precautions to keep everybody safe. It's our obligation to give children the experiences that they deserve educationally, as long as we can do so safely. But those safety precautions also cost additional funds. So there are a lot that goes into this. I know that there's a lot of conversation that needs to happen around the table, and there are several scenarios to choose from. So I'm hoping that through some feedback from the board, that you all can come to some decision. We feel, I don't want to speak for Dr. McKay and Ms. Linsky, but I think we feel pretty strongly about our students and our faculty and the needs of our children.
Yeah.
So I'd like to weigh in on the 3 scenarios that were presented to us this evening. I've given this a lot of thought over the last few days, a lot of thought throughout today. And I've long advocated for multi-year planning with our budget. I've always said that I believe that we have to both increase our revenues and decrease our expenses in order to get through the state funding cuts. With all of that being said, I do think that we can absorb future price increases to our healthcare plan with the third scenario that was presented, with the 1.35% increase to the levy. That shows a $722,000 decrease off of the previously advertised budget. I think that compromise is important, particularly when you are budgeting. And I think that this allows us to modestly increase our revenues to plan for unexpected expenses, unexpected increases to our health benefits plans, but it doesn't have us going to the full amount that we would have otherwise been allowed to go to in the tax levy increase. And I do think that we would still be able to absorb a high percentage increase in our health benefits come January, if that were to happen. I still believe that this would allow us to achieve targets for multi-year revenue, and that's the option that I think is the most financially prudent. The 1.35, the third scenario.
I do think that's a fair compromise.
I'm worried about our facilities. We have tabled facilities projects in this district for at least the 3 years I've been here, perhaps 5 years. We have not invested in the infrastructure of our buildings, not only with COVID, but with other, health and safety operations of our district for our faculty and staff is of great concern. As I've done building walkthroughs with the Buildings and Grounds Committee, we have window seals that are broken in some of our buildings. We have unit vents that are aging. We have other items that we perhaps don't know about. I just want to finish my thought. I'm sorry, Mr. Nunziata. The only other thing I was going to say is that I've heard so much around this table about morale and around valuing our faculty and what they need in order to come to work and feel safe and healthy and cared for. And I think further deferring the needs of our facilities is of concern. And I do think that preventative maintenance we talked about some wonderful return on investment opportunities for us in taking care of some facilities projects in the next several years. That can only be done by budgeting in a certain fashion. And I think that would be a wise decision for us to consider. I'm worried about our schools.
But I have a question. We had budgeted in the capital reserve $3 million.
Not in this budget.
It's next year.
Next year's, okay, so next year's
Well,
budget.
the board will have to decide
But-
that. It's not,
I know,
that's
not
not being
for this
decided
one.
tonight.
I get that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, if that's for next year's, okay, one thing that I was thinking of at the last meeting, but now it's coming back to me, because if we're looking at this, we're looking at a compromise, going down, whatever happened to the referendum? Because then if we moved into projects, 40% would be covered by the state. So we had a referendum, it got started, and then where did it go? That's a big part of the budget and our grounds and facilities.
We had a referendum committee that was set up about a year ago. Mr. O'Donnell
was on
and
it.
Ms.
Yep.
Lutner served on it prior to
Started
joining the
off pretty
board.
strong, and then
Yeah.
And then COVID.
it
Some of
started off
the-
strong and then tanked. We did some tours of the schools.
Yeah.
We looked at some of the things that were potential issues. And then it kind of just withered away, to be honest with you.
Okay, because that would be a big component of taking care of our grounds and our facilities. and-
Sure. I mean, between that and the energy audit, I think that would be a good,
Yeah.
good thing.
And just to let you know, I'm reaching out to Elizabethtown Gas and just seeing if it's possible to get a line to the high school. Like
Wait, what's
that
that? I'm sorry, I couldn't understand.
I reached out to Elizabethtown Gas. I'm trying to see if it's possible. We had discussed it at the liaison meeting. If they could put a line to the high school. They said it hasn't been asked in the last 20 years. So that would be another significant savings.
So in
If we
May
can
and
get off
June,
the electric.
the board will have to make a decision about whether they would like to entertain a recommendation to deposit funds into capital reserve. And that can all be part of that conversation at that point. But I do want to continue to discuss what we would like to do this evening. My position is that the third option will allow us to meet our long-term financial targets and still absorb potential increases to our health benefits line. We're asking the taxpayers for a net increase of 1.18% on the tax levy. And we're removing some funds that were previously budgeted from the advertised budget. I think that that's a fair position, and I think it's financially prudent. Do other board members want to speak to the options before us this evening? Otherwise, I'd like to do a straw poll of the board to see where the position of the board is. What's that?
Can I say something?
Yeah, please.
I mean, I don't really agree with that because we know we have a problem going forward.
You have to pull the
Can you just pull your mic
microphone in.
forward?
Sorry, we know we have a problem going forward with funding state. It's all been talked about forever. And I understand Mr. O'Donnell's point, we don't know the exact thing with the savings. But with the cap and everything that will disappear this year, we can't go back. If we give up the money, we give up the money. So I understand nobody wants taxes to go up. Nobody wants that. We all live in town. It affects all of us. But from the 1.8 to the 3.3 is $30 increase. I know we talk in percents, but $30 would be the difference between the two plans. And I know 200,000 is not legitimate, but it should stay constant as you go higher. I just feel if we go with the 1.8 and we have more problems next year, we can't undo it. You know, what if we don't know what they're going to raise it to? But next year, if we do have extra money again, we could lower the tax to 1.5. But we're in a spot here where we don't have any escape. And we're setting ourselves up to make the box even smaller by not pushing to the limit. I understand nobody wants taxes, but you know, the state laws, the cap, all this stuff, they don't really allow schools to look ahead for whatever reasons. You can't store money knowing you have a problem in 5 years from now. They just don't let you do it. So to me, to bypass and give up the cap at this point just doesn't make financial sense for us. We could always, say we do 3.3 this year, which she's estimating 2%, Ms. Liskey. We could maybe do 1.5 if everything works in our favor. But what if things work against us? Then, like I said, we just keep cutting, and eventually you cut the things you don't want to cut. So that's my opinion.
I agree. Those are all my concerns as well.
I don't really think you can budget somebody else's money on what if.
I agree that this is a very crucial year. I'm not one for putting Band-Aids on bullet holes. I think the people around this table who've known me for a couple of years know that. I don't want anybody to think that we are not listening to the taxpayer, but I think that if we do decide to go with the 2.45 as a board, it is prudent that next year, we do say to the taxpayer, you know what, you helped us out. Let's look at it. But I feel like that this is just a crucial year that will make a difference 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line.
Okay, so I'd like to go around the table to get a final position from each board member as to whether they would like to see the final recommendation be the advertised option 1, option 2, or option 3. So everybody knows what I refer to when I say 1, 2, and 3. So that
One
we're
is 2.45.
Yes.
2 is 1.9, and 3 is 1.35.
Yes, or the advertised is the 3.03,
Right.
the previously
So
advertised.
there's 4 options.
Yes. Yes. All right, so can we begin over here on the left with Adina?
I feel that I would like to go with the 2.45.
Ms. Pellet?
2.45.
Mr. Zimmerman?
3.03.
Mr. Semaglia?
I'm going to say the option 2, 1.9.
Can you bring your mic closer?
Option 2, not 1.9.
Okay. Mr. O'Donnell?
I would vote for option 2 or 3. Just because we have a cap doesn't mean we have to use it.
Wait, now when you say 2 or 3,
Yeah, what?
there's actually 4.
Well, the
Well,
first one is called
advertised.
Advertised.
Yeah, the
Right.
advertised.
So it's 1.9 or 1.35.
Thank you.
Either one.
Could you commit to one?
Sure, 1.9. I'd rather see that.
I'll go with 2.45.
Ms. Coughlin?
I agree with Martin, 1.93, 1.35. Which one did you choose, Martin?
Excuse me?
Which one did you choose?
1.9.
I'll go with Martin on 1.9.
Ms. Mitchell?
1.35.
1.35. So at this point, 1.35 is the percent that I think is the best to move forward with, but that does not leave us with a majority. That's 2.45 and 1.9 having the most.
I will change
Support?
mine to 1.35 to move over.
That doesn't help us. We still have a tie.
Well, better than nothing.
Well, then why don't we just take those two that are a tie and go back around?
We can do that.
Wait, what are we going to do?
Are you narrowing the choices to
Yes, now
2.45
I'm
and
taking two
1.90
choices.
and having people vote?
Yes.
Yes. So you either vote for 2.45
2.45 or
or
1.9.
1.35.
1.90 or 1.35.
Well, the three of us did 1.35.
Okay. Ms. Luther?
Sorry. So the options again were the 2.45 or the
1.35.
2.45.
Okay. Ms. Pellet?
2.45.
Mr. Zimmerman?
2.45.
Mr. Smigli?
I'm sorry, was option one?
2.45 or 1.35, option 1 or 2.
I don't want to go with the 2.45, but I think 1.35 is too low, but I will go with 2.45.
2.45.
1.35.
2.45.
Ms. Coughlin?
1.35.
Ms. Mitchell?
1.35.
1.35 is my position still. Okay, so there are 5 board members who were in favor of going with the 2.45 on the levy increase, which would be to decrease the healthcare line item by 249,000 net of the personnel change.
So now the four people, so it's what, 5 to 4?
Yes.
So 5 to 4, so then when we vote, we could possibly have 4 no votes.
If the board moves forward, I'm going to support the majority position of the board.
So wouldn't that mean you voting last?
No, based off of this conversation, I'm going to support the majority position of the board. So I will still vote for the budget. That's what I'm saying.
All right, well, I think we should hear from members of the public.
Wait a minute.
Well, we
You're
are not
telling me,
voting
hold
until
on.
we hear from
I
them.
asked you a
Right.
question about
Yeah.
that because
Yeah.
that does not sit well with me at all.
Okay.
Okay, what you're saying is you're going to change your vote to the majority. just
No.
Because it's a majority.
No, my position was that on the estimate for the healthcare increase,
Right.
I supported 1.35% options, the third option.
Mhm.
However, on the overall budget, I will still support the budget because I do believe it's a good budget. And the majority of the board wanted to make that decision on the healthcare line item. But I will still support the overall budget this evening.
Because there's a vote on the, I'm sorry. Because there's a vote on the agenda. In other words, this is.
Later in the evening,
discussion.
we're going to vote
Right.
on the budget,
Understood, but I'm confused.
which
as
is
to what you just
influenced
said.
by, throughout the year, throughout the budget process, the board comes to consensus on various items in a budget. I still think that the overall budget as a whole is generally a good budget. I disagreed on what I would have budgeted for an increase in the healthcare line item, but I will still support the overall budget.
So even though you disagree with what.
Yes, just
on the
because I
healthcare
disagree
line,
with
you're
one
still
line
gonna pass
item.
the budget, that's what you're saying.
Yes, just because I disagree with one line item does not mean I will vote against the entire
Okay,
budget.
I understand.
So 2.45 had the most support. Option 1.
Mr. Nunziata, at what point does the agenda get amended regarding the attachments?
You would just pull the other 2 recommendations
Okay, at what point?
when we get to those recommendations. Are there any other
Justin, where
questions?
does that money go if we don't use it?
Fund balance? Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, so there will be a vote later in the agenda. We do have public participation, which is item K, but I would like to amend the agenda to move item K up to this point in the agenda, because I imagine many of the comments will have to do with the budget. So I would like to give the public the opportunity to comment on the budget at this time, as well as any other items on the agenda. So I'll open it to the public for items on the agenda and any student comments. Please state your name, part of town, and you'll have 5 minutes. We'll begin with those who are attending in person. I'm going to set a timer just so you'll hear that.
Glenwood. I'm not surprised at what just took place. You just spent an hour talking about 1/10 to 100% of the budget. Something that I picked up 2 weeks ago to notify there was $900,000 in the budget for increased healthcare costs. And as others have pointed out, you don't even have the basis to make the judgment. And the BA, I'm very, very feeling sorry for you. You're totally unprepared for this job. Your presentation was to present the budget. You just showed the PowerPoints that you did last week with no details. We were talking about $11 million being appropriated, withheld, put into reserve, and this whole discussion ignored all that. You just went down to a 1-line item, which was the healthcare cost benefits from the state plan. And furthermore, the rationale is supposed to be money, the budget, the operating, not emotional issues that some board members are basing their entire thought process on. There are certain obligations of the board member, and you'll see if you haven't gone through all the online programs, that your responsibility is primarily the budget, hiring the senior level people, giving them their yearly reviews, staying within the law, and doing the things that a board member is supposed to do, not acting on the emotional things that have been discussed here. That's number one. Number two, it's my understanding that you did get a 2-year rate increase, freeze on the state plan. If you did, the BA should know that. That should be a yes or no. You don't know that answer. And this whole thing was predicated on it's going to possibly go up. Was there a 2-year rate guarantee?
No,
No, you're sure of that?
absolutely 100%.
Okay, so that'll come out. We'll see if that's factual. And since the discussion the last time, I'm wondering if what triggered this whole thing for me was looking at online and seeing the secretary's budgetary numbers that are handed out every month in the meetings. That's where the financials are shown. And what it showed was he had 8.8 million in the bank, and you had 1.1 million due by the end of the year, leaving a surplus of 7.7 million. So one question I have, is that surplus still factual, or have you decided that you're going to pay something that wasn't going to come out of the 1.1 million?
Are you talking about last week's presentation on the projected that we don't have the numbers on yet at this point?
No,
And
I'm talking about every month you have.
I
the
don't
amount-
know, should I be addressing? I don't.
No, you
I
can
don't-
answer, you can respond to questions during the
Okay.
board member forum.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the question is, are we still projecting the same surplus at the end of the year as we were at the last meeting? I'm not sure if you are. I think some of those numbers have changed. And I think that's critical if you move forward with the budget. You have to know how much surplus there is, because in Justin's statements and agreed to by Mr. Sweeney in the meeting of March 18th, conceptually, You want to know if everybody was okay with what you were doing. And the discussion that Justin and I had after last week's meeting was that we tried to come to an agreement on the surplus, what's really needed and what's discretionary. And we came to somewhat of a conclusion. There's about $3 million that's discretionary floating around that could go right back to the taxpayers now and forward, and you can then plan for the next 3 years. Those things I think we agreed on. The other question I had, I made an assumption, I've heard everybody else make the assumption, that the savings of 2.9 mil and the additional 7.7 were due to COVID. I don't know if that's true. Can somebody tell me where this savings came from? It was either through COVID or it was over budgeting for monies we didn't need. I don't know where it came from. If it came from over budgeting, then we're repeating the same mistakes we did by having this budget surplus, and we're over budgeting again. So those are serious questions. You should know those. There's no guess on those things. Which items did you have surplus in and why? Pretty easy. And the last thing I just wanted to say on posting these videos on the board, for some reason, the video of the meeting on the 15th, which was up for a week, disappeared. And the meeting from the 22nd was not uploaded until I complained, and it got uploaded on Tuesday. So something happened, and I don't know how it happened. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but it disappeared, and the new one wasn't uploaded until 5 days after it normally is.
We'll make sure that the meetings are on the website, on the
Okay.
YouTube channel.
Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Hello, Brad Sparta from the Sussex side of town. Unfortunately, the creation of a school budget is fundamentally flawed. And it's flawed because you start with revenues. There's not a business around that starts with their revenues when they budget. They start with their expenditures, or in your case, the appropriations.
Speak a little bit closer to the mic, please.
Normally, I'm told I don't need a mic, Joe.
Well, maybe it's been getting old.
I am getting old, thank you. And because of that, you have your revenue set and you fit your expenditures to it. To dive into a school budget and look at all the expenditures is very time consuming. It's something that back years ago on the board, we would spend numerous nights looking at. Ms. Coughlin brought up last week that there wasn't a lot of those meetings this year, and it was evident. Unfortunately, I have nothing better to do, and I've been watching the meetings, but I can only stomach them at a half hour at a time. The $3 million that go into capital reserves is absolutely ludicrous. We have never had $3 million in capital reserves in this district. To hear that buildings have been put on hold in the last 3 years, Ms. Davino, I'm sorry, that is incorrect. Matter of fact, just last year, there was an AC unit with a crane that was put on to the top of the high school. That is just one project off the top of my head. So to say it's been put on hold for 3 years is wrong. Mr. Annunziata went to a school board's convention and came back with the idea of setting up the referendum committee. I thank Ms. Coughlin for bringing it up. That through the referendum, that is funded 40% from the state. So if you want to put $3 million into capital reserves to do these capital projects, you are taking an additional 40% from the taxpayer to do these projects that could be funded by the state. The reason why the referendum probably doesn't want to go through is the likelihood of it passing is probably slim. There's a reason for that. People cannot afford what's going on, and I appreciate Ms. Mitchell saying that. It'd be at least advantageous to go ahead, even though it costs some money to put it on a ballot and go out for a bond issuance, to go ahead and do that, to save on $3 million, you'd be saving $1.2 million. I hear people talking about wanting to put money back in the classroom. That's $1.2 million that you could put back in the classroom. Lastly, when I watched last week's meeting, a board member brought up, and it was about an hour into the meeting, If you want to go back and watch it, you're more than welcome to, but once was enough for me. The board member asked if there was some puffing that was going on in the budget and never really got a direct answer, although the person was attacked, for a lack of a better term, from a couple board members sitting at the table. Oddly enough, about 15 minutes after that, Mr. Nunziata stated that we need to go to 3.03%, otherwise we set ourselves up for failure in future years. So now are we setting ourselves up for failure in future years by not going to 3.03%? I don't understand. You can't have one and not the other. So is it 1.35% and we're going to fail in 2 or 3 years? Or is it 3.03% because we need to go to 3.03%? Not that we have to, it's that we need to. There's a big difference in that. I'm not going to stick around for the rest of the meeting. I don't want to be rude, but I'm going to leave. It's a shame to see how this budget process happened. I was told when I got on the board in 2009 from a long-term member, when that was when the cap was at 4%, you need to go to 4% every year, otherwise you screw up each year down the road. That is such, you want to talk about failing, that is failing. When you use what you're allowed to use just because you're allowed to use it, you are failing this community. I don't mean to be rude, I'm going home. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Steve Dunlop, Williamsville Estates. There's really not much more to say. I've been talking to both of the gentlemen that spoke tonight for some time. I spent the whole day looking at the numbers and got so confused because it was like, well, is there a plan? Is there not a plan? Is it going to be plan A or plan B or plan C? And now it's plan D. I managed 186 people in 13 countries and had about a $70 million budget, very similar to this. As Brad said, we did it completely opposite of what I've seen going on here, especially this year. I know there's a lot of new board members, and I really am curious as to their wherewithal or their ability to really do a proper analysis. And tonight we sat here for an hour, as Mr. Higgins said, for 1 hour, talking about a 1% change. In industry, if you lose a substantial part of your customers, you get rid of a substantial part of your expenses, which includes staff. It was said at the last meeting that the teachers have suffered, and after the meeting, I spoke with the assistant superintendent, and he agreed with me that those that have stayed have not really suffered. They've gotten a salary increase every year. By contract, they can only be in the classroom for 225 minutes of a 7-hour day. I'm sorry, 225 minutes of a 7-hour day. That's 3 hours and 45 minutes. Once again, you're talking about 17%. And now we're talking about just one line item. We spent 1 hour talking about one line item. And I have been told by 2 former superintendents that when you join the state plan, there's a 2-year with no increase. We'll find out if Mr. Higgins is right. I went home from the last meeting. I started talking to my wife. She got upset with me. She said, I don't know why you bother. They're going to do what they're going to do. So you should just get up and say, this is what I would like to say, but it's really not going to make much difference. So I'm not even going to bother to say it. I've heard a couple of board members tonight say some very useful things, but I've heard several board members tonight just talk about emotional things and about our children. If you lose students, your cost should go down. We've known for several years this was going on. This is not something that we just found out last year. As certain people have said, we knew this was coming. we've got to find a way to reduce costs. And that includes compensation because that's 83% of your budget. And until this board is willing to find some way to renegotiate something with the teachers union, none of this is going to matter for much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the effort you put in. I've come to many, many budget meetings, and this has been a unique one, I will say. But I do want to commend a couple of board members that are here tonight. One's been here for quite some time. We've not always seen eye to eye on things, but I think she's been very thoughtful tonight, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Oh, I would want to add one more thing real quick. I misspoke at the last meeting about the 8695. I'm sorry, 8596. That's what I was told by a couple of former board members. They misspoke. We went from an 85 to a 95.
Yes.
Every board member that was on the committee should have known at that time that if you were going to add a period, you were going to need more teachers. The former business administrator said in Lounsbury Hollow and lied to me, which I confronted him with at a later board meeting, that he said there were no teachers being added to the budget. When I knew they were adding 7 teachers to Glen Meadow because Glen Meadow went to the same schedule as the high school. At some point, it's got to be addressed. If not by this board, then a future board. But we can't just keep kicking that ball down the road. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just want to reiterate that we have in the past 3 years reduced our certified staff by 59 people, that our teachers have suffered in the sense that they have larger classrooms. And we did discuss this publicly last week. And the discussion that we had at the end of the meeting was about whether the rest of the people would have their salary cut. And we all know that during negotiations, that does not happen.
Nobody has had a salary cut.
It's really
Chuck.
important.
Yeah.
It's really important to talk about this. Our teachers have larger classes because there's 60 less or 59 less certified people in this district. You were talking about a $70 million budget with 180 folks. We have a $66 million budget. We have over 500 people.
That's exactly right.
Our teachers have worked very hard. And I said it last week, and I'll say it again. When we start to talk about the money that was saved, it was saved because of our staff. You said it, Mr. Dunlap, 83% of our budget is personnel and health benefits.
Thanks, Chuck.
Yep.
Any other public comments?
May I make a comment about the health benefits? It's not a 2-year freeze on the cost of the benefits. It's a 2-year commitment that the district made to be in the state health plan. That's all. There was never any discussion about a freeze.
Any other public comments from members of the public who are attending in person before we go to the Zoom?
Vicki Smith. I am a Vernon High School English teacher. I am the VTEA president, and I live in the Lake Walk Hill section of Vernon. I believe during negotiations, the projected savings for the health benefits was $600,000. Thank you.
Any other public comments from members of the public attending in person? Okay, Mr. Shea, do we have anybody attending via Zoom? Okay, can the television screen is not working. It went to sleep.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Barely. Hold on a second. He froze.
Can you hear me?
Just give us 1 minute. We're just setting up the microphone.
Okay. Tell me when. I don't want to lose my 5 minutes.
I'll start the clock once the microphone's set up.
Go ahead, Marcus. Okay. I've come to a lot of meetings, and I would like to take a comment on a couple of things I've heard here today and also in the past few meetings. Number one, from a comment today, it was that the comment was you cannot budget other people's money based on assumption. A budget by definition is an assumption of what you're going to spend. Okay, for number one. Number two, we have correctly not planned for many years, and that was a mistake, and this is hurting us. I have prepared some numbers here. There was the comment made that we had a $69 million budget with 5,000 kids, and now we have a $62 million budget with 3,000 kids. The thing is, when we had the $69 million budget with 5,000 kids, between then and now, cost of living have increased by an average of 3.85% a year. That means the double every 17 years. If you would apply this number to the budget from then to now, our budget now would be about 140 million, give or take, if we still had the 5,000 or 5,500 kids. If you figure it at the 2% a year budgeted increase that the state allows, which by itself is choking the system, because how can you live and run a business when you only can increase the revenue of half the cost increase that you have? But then our budget would still be about $115 million a year. So having a $62 million budget compared to that, with about 60% of the kids we had then, that is very much in line. As a next point I want to make, yes, I don't want to pay taxes, but I urge you to go with the 3.03% because of, first of all, we can only increase by 2%, and inflation is continued projected to be up in the 4% range, 3 to 4%, depending on who you're talking to. So we're gonna continue to lose. And number two is I'm willing to pay that money even though my kids are out of school and everything, because I want a good education for the kids. I believe society only works if those who can do for those who can't. And the kids can't yet, and the old people can't, and the sick people can't, etc. So us who are still able to do, have to do for those people and provide. Plus I'm getting old, and I want to be taken care of when I come to the point that I can't, by a person who is well educated and not some idiot. Okay? So I want the money to be there and the resources for our people to help. We have had class size increases very simply for the fact that there is a national teacher shortage coming. Because a lot of college kids who were going to become teachers saw what happened to teachers in the COVID situation, and they said, oh no, I do something else. Okay. Plus, schools don't have an HR department. Okay. My daughter went through Vernon Township High School. She graduated. She went to Cornell. She graduated. She got a job at Capital One. Her starting salary was $100,000. Correctly, $99,753. Okay. Now she had 2 10% raises. Why? She's a smart girl. She's doing good. And Capital One puts it in the prospectus as hire and retain quality employees, human talent, a human resource. It is not being addressed here through the budget. What do we spend on hiring and retaining quality resources, human talent? It's for our kids. It's for our future. So we are looking down the barrel of class sizes further increasing, not necessarily by what you budget, but simply because there are less teachers around.
Mr. Perringer, thank you very much for your comments. That was 5 minutes.
Okay, I will continue in the later session.
Thank you. Mr. Shea, do we have others in the Zoom chat who are raising their hand to be admitted for public comments? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I was told to unmute again.
Is it my turn, Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Monch.
This is Barbara Munchauer. I'm a teacher in Lansbury Hollow. I just wanted to very briefly respectfully ask the members of the public that when you're referring to the Vernon Township Education Association, that you refer to it as educators and not just simply teachers. We are a group of dedicated professionals. We are nurses, custodians, aides, teachers, paraprofessionals, secretaries, child study team members, and probably more than I'm leaving off of the list. But it is not fair to all of our members to simply refer to us as the teachers union. We are a very large, dedicated group of people who are here simply to educate children because we want to. As you said, Mr. Perringer, his daughter is making far more money than I am making, and I am teaching because I want to teach. The paraprofessionals that come into my room and help are there for children. The secretaries who are there for the children. So I would respectfully ask that when you refer to our union, that you refer to it as the Vernon Education Association. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linsky, did we receive any emails to the public comment email?
We did.
Thank you.
Denise Clark, near Haven Hill Farms area. Giant kudos to VTS.
Teresa, I can't hear you.
Sorry. Denise Clark, near Haven Hill Farms area. Giant kudos to VTSD. I am donating my time as a DJ to this coming spring carnival to give back to the district for all the hard work that you have all done and show my appreciation. I can't wait for next week with my 9-year-old twins who attend Rolling Hills. We want to say thank you. My kids are so happy to be back in school full time, and everyone is doing such a great job of keeping the kids safe. Their mental health alone is so much better now that they can get back to somewhat normalcy. Sincere, with much appreciation, Denise Clark.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other public comments, we will close it to the public at this time and return to where we previously were on the agenda with
Justin,
item. Yes.
Can I say something before you move on? In reference
Sure.
to what we talked about before? Okay.
Sure, there will also be an opportunity for more question and comments as well during the vote on the
Right, I just want to
resolution.
bring this up now
Sure.
so people can think about it a little bit, okay? Given the information, I can't remember her name, I apologize, but Vicky Smith brought up, okay, if you take $600,000 and you subtract that from 2020, 2021, okay, and then you put in that same amount of 10,390, all right, your 10% increase at 2.45 now changes to 16% for a half a year and 32% for a year. In my eyes, that's fiscally irresponsible.
But that number was projected, right? Projected savings? So we're still there.
No, that was actual. That was
No.
calculated from one policy to another.
And we got half a year this year and half next year. Because I'm just, one of the problems I think we have right now is there's a lot of not actual numbers, actual for all of it.
Pull your microphone, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, one of the biggest problems, and I'm new coming into this is, I have to say, I was looking at the 2.5 and I was disappointed. knowing that the number is not right. And I understand what Martin's saying here, from what he heard from the lady in the crowd, or a couple of people, Vicky, I'm sorry, Vicky. But, you know, we're looking at not real numbers, and, you know, it's, you know, I don't know. I guess we should save it for later, but I just want to point out, still don't feel like we're getting any kind of accurate number that we're looking at.
You could vote for the 1.35 and get the same dollar increase that you would at 2.45.
Since I opened it up for you to speak, Mr. O'Donnell, I just want to make sure any other board members if they wanted to weigh in before I move back to the agenda.
I just want to thank Martin for quick math. Thank you, Martin.
Okay. Item G is approval of the minutes. Can we have a motion? Oh.
5 minutes is up.
Yeah, my 5 minutes is up. Can we have a motion for item G 1 through 4?
So moved.
Was that Ms. Luthner?
Yes, that was.
Motion by Ms. Luthner, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Zimmerman. Questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Oh,
Letter H?
no, we have to do a roll call vote. Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote
Sorry.
for G 1 through 4?
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell?
She called me. I'm sorry. Yes.
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 Abstain.
Thank you. Item H is correspondence.
Please note correspondence is listed in letter H.
Thank you. Item I is the president's report. I'd like to keep it very brief. I want to thank all of our faculty, staff, students, and families for all of the work that they've put in over the last month as we've gone to combining cohorts. I know that it has been a big effort on everyone's part to continue to educate during COVID with socially distancing and everything else that has been entailed, and also with teaching some students virtually while some students are in front of you. Your efforts don't go unnoticed, so I would like to thank you for that. I also would like to point out, and I'm sure it'll come up later in the meeting as well, that this Friday and Saturday is a spring carnival for our younger grades. I want to thank the work of Ms. Mitchell and the Student Life Committee, our central office administrators and our building level administrators, and our faculty and staff and everybody who's been putting in a lot of work to make this happen. So I hope that we have great attendance by some of our younger students. Dr. McKay, I'd like to ask you to speak to the passing of a dear longtime employee in the district as well at this time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nunziata. This past Sunday, Ms. Peggy Babcock passed away. Peggy has worked for us for years as a custodian and been a faithful member of our high school staff, well recognized around the hallways, particularly in the late afternoons and evenings. I want to wish my condolences to Keith, her husband, who also works for us, Bonnie, another relative who also works for us, and the entire family. We saw them today, and it's quite a loss. So I would ask, because this person is an active employee, that we have a moment of silence for her. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Nunziata. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. McKay. Item J is committee reports.
I have a couple of reports. I have a partnership report. Partnership committee met April 21st. We had a lively discussion with, the attendees were Adina Luthner, Jennifer Paulette, Mrs. Davino, Dr. McKay, Teresa Linsky, myself, and a number of representatives from the VTEA and VTAA. Discussion items included feedback regarding switching to Delta Dental, a lively discussion regarding going all in and combining the two cohorts. We were discussing outside classes and tents, the transportation, the use of playgrounds, class sizes, and teacher and children morale. And one of the things that the teachers pointed out were that the children seemed to be in much better shape now that they were all back together. And it was nice to hear. And a number of the teachers were extremely complimentary of the extraordinary work that the aides were doing. Many are in high-risk positions, especially those responsible to assist in toileting, hand washing, and other personal care of school-age children. And that was a very nice compliment from some of the teachers, and we should remember them. And there was a concern about the frustration that we all get due to the rules regarding COVID, and it seems to be that the information is constantly different or changing. We don't know, but just there was a lot of feedback on that. It was a good meeting. It was just a place where everybody seemed to feel comfortable in just letting us know what's going on. We also had a finance committee meeting on the